Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Krasi, and this is the AI Pressure Cooker live on LinkedIn and also live on YouTube. So today, since it's summer, I thought we would start with an interesting story. At least for me, it's been on the top of my mind for quite some time, and I want to take you back in time at the factory of Toyota. And specifically, I wanted to share what fascinated me about one of the key architects of Toyota production system. His name is Taiichi Ono. And the interesting thing about Mr. Ono is that he used to draw this circle on the floor of the factory and then invite engineers, managers to basically stand inside of it, sometimes even for hours. And believe it or not, their job was just to see the mess and not fix anything immediately. And the approach, in a way, we're talking here back at the late 40s, beginning of the 50s. At that time, it was really controversial because it was different from what managers back then and even now behave and thought their job was. They were expected, obviously, to know, to decide, to fix, to move, to instruct. But Ono made them do the opposite. He made them stand still, watch, and realize that actually they didn't really understand the work as much as they thought they did. And by doing so, he made a couple of things possible. Obviously, the first and the big one was that not knowing was actually okay. Managers had to treat observation for the first time as actual work. And he also, on point, made them get bored because this actually helped them think more critically and discover real insights. And why am I telling you this story? I think that there is a really strong parallel of what we are witnessing in the product world right now, just the modern version of the problem. Because obviously AI is rewarding a lot of motion, a lot of activity, removing friction everywhere so that we can generate, test, automate everything super fast. But I keep wondering myself, by removing this idea of the pause, aren't we also removing the moment where product judgment happens and we end up with speeding up around a product that we actually understand less and less? So today, I thought, why not draw this circle with the help of Julia? So I invited her to join the AI Pressure Cooker Live, and I'm super excited to see where we go from here. So Julia, welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you, Krasi, and thank you for inviting me to your AI Pressure Cooker today. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Julia. I'm a product and design leader, recent founder of Lumio. Very quick story. It's just a very personal motivation. After years of building product and leading teams, I was increasingly surprised how much time we spend on working almost around the product, especially reconstructing how it works, and instead of actually directly in the product. And so Lumio is kind of my attempt to give teams, and not to forget about the agents, and the topic is AI, of course, but to provide this collaboration, this base layer of a shared living view of what the product actually does, so they can make decisions from a shared baseline.
Mm-hmm. And I find the minute I discovered your work really important and urgent at this point in time, because in a way, removing this friction or removing the opportunity to pause actually provides, in my opinion, a blind spot for fast-moving product teams. So I'm super interested in hearing your views about the visibility gap. But before we get into it and talk about AI, I wanted to start with, I know that you spend so much time with this research and packaging the results through this interesting report. And I wanted to ask you, what made you realize that the problem is really much worse than just bad documentation?
Yeah, I think this is just my ingrained product user experience and research background, really. Mm-hmm. When you think about documentation, it is obviously a point in time, kind of ephemeral output, really. I often like to draw on real life examples. If you think of documentation almost like a blueprint or a drawing or whatever you want to call it, like compare it with something like architecture. When you walk through a house and you see the rooms and you feel the rooms, that is the actual experience. But when you look at a blueprint of an architectural drawing, that is not the house. And we treat that blueprint drawing, that architectural drawing, as if that were the house in product. And we all know this, right? Like, we love documentation, but we also, no one reads it and it's never up to date. So this is a forcing function for us to actually rethink, well, what was documentation for? And it was a means to an end. It was trying to hand over information when we were still typewriting things. We're in a different time, and the way we document today and transfer knowledge is beyond words.
But I also feel that there is so much at stake in this idea of the lack of product visibility, and also this perception of actually what the product is, because at the end of the day, is this living system of codes, data, user journey, decisions of people that influence a certain direction and then left, and it's really very complicated to reconstruct this reality. And I wanted to ask you, if we drew a parallel between what we are sitting right now in terms of urgency and the challenges on the product world with the work of Toyota in the 50s with this circle, what would the circle represent today for product teams? Is this the product visibility kind of reintroduced, or is it something else that the circle demands?
Yeah, and I think I do think that this pause that Taichi Ono introduced is really he forced people to just watch for observation, right? They were learning by being quiet, and it's almost like a meditative or a Buddhist approach of like, I don't have the answer, I'm being forced to be still just to really understand. And quite frankly, we don't have that ability right now in product. Like, the only way we get even a glimpse of what's happening on an assembly line, like in the 40s, 50s, this was the birthplace of Lean and Toyota, improving these processes around that. Our processes today don't allow us to do that at all. We cannot watch customers interact unless we instrument the tool and then watch session replays. And who has the time to watch hundreds of session replays? So yes, I do think this pause, this risk of really understanding the function and the branching of the different routes, the bottlenecks, the churn points, we construct that. And so we have such a delayed feedback loop, like we cannot see, so we cannot understand, and our decisions are based on an abstraction, like a layer of abstraction.
And worse than that, it is also that as product managers, if I'm just wearing this hat for a minute, it ends up being the responsible function of actually stitching these fragments together. But obviously, it's not a new piece of art, like in Japan. I forgot now the name of when you create from fragments something really beautiful. Here, it's not the same effect. And I wanted to ask you, let's define potentially in a simple way this whole idea of what the product visibility gap is and why is it so dangerous and why every product team needs to stay on top of it. Would you help us make it simple so that people can wrap their heads around it?
Yeah, I mean, like the way that I would describe the visibility gap is really that there is a difference between what customers experience, what we in organizations are able to reconstruct, what kind of evidence, let's say analytics or metrics we might have, and how we piece this together. And a really simple example, let's take an onboarding journey. the onboarding journey will be documented or perceived or seen very differently from a function such as engineering or customer support or customer relationship management. These are often different functions within the organization. They don't share tooling. They often don't share the same artifact. They have very specialized response systems to handle where customers are in a product, in an experience. And they never relate unless we stitch it together, which is, like a huge amount of manual burden and organizational leakage in terms of how we share information. So the distance, simply put, is the distance between customer experience, what teams think they have, what is live, what the organization can actually show in evidence. And there are different viewpoints into that.
And for those of the audience that haven't had the chance to actually check the report, I would encourage everyone to go to the research that Julia and Lumio did in this domain, because just to review a little bit of why I'm so passionate about this topic, if you think about what is at stake, this product visibility gap, unusually, it's $1 million problem. So we are not talking here a little bit, we are talking a lot that is at stake, and it's only going to get worse today, because if teams don't have a reliable picture, how can we expect that this acceleration actually is going to get to the results? But I wanted to also ask your opinion, because to me, what is so shocking in this context when we think about product visibility and what is at stake is how normalized it has become, despite the fact that we sit on so many tools and we praise ourselves in terms of efficiency, but at the end of the day, it's not really what is happening. So why is that from your experience?
Yeah, to me, this was also a very astounding surfacing of facts. Just the sheer amount of money that the money that we spend on very highly specialized tooling, from observability tools to analytics to whatnot, all the way to very highly specialized functions. If you think about it, and we're all trying to build a shared experience, but we can't see the shared experience. I need to remind myself, what was the question?
I wanted to ask you about this fragmentation of the tools. Why we have so much? Never in the past we were so equipped, but at the same time,
True.
It's not really helping. And what I also remember from the report is this specific idea that the tools are showing the work around the product, but not really the product. And I thought, oh my God, we have to unpack this with Julia.
Yeah, it's very true. And thanks for reminding me of the question. And on the one hand, I think it has to do with the specialization. Like, we've all become hyper specialized in, how we take the product apart. And there's a lot of value in that, right? Like being able to really trace analytics all the way through and setting up tag management and understanding the ontology around it. There's value in this. But I think fundamentally, product itself is an exchange of value between customers and business. And because it's an exchange, it is always a give and take. And the product sits at that middle point. It's like a seesaw, it's like, oh, I have input, I have output. There is never a direct relationship. It is always indirect because product translates. And because of that, I think just the plain understanding what that translation layer is, how is it composed, what's that theory of product, what are the actual ingredients, it becomes really hard, especially because product is an emergent phenomenon, socio-technical. It takes time. People come, people leave, new people join, the perspectives shift. And because we don't have these fundamental structural instructions that we can rely back on, we don't have a living system that we can actually just query, we end up with this amalgamation, really, like almost like crusted layers of different people putting different puzzle pieces on top of it. But we're left with, a kaleidoscope, really, like different shards of what we think that product really is.
And it was really astonishing to see how much of the day-to-day or the week activities of the teams, based on your research, is actually reconstructing this reality. Can you talk us a little bit about that, and why is this so difficult, and what can we learn from such a challenging situation?
I think it is like, it was lived experience, very plain, like I entered technology through consulting. We were a software house. We built a lot of 0 to 1 products. You came into the door, you didn't know anything. So discovery was part of the lived experience, like, yeah, we have no idea. So we have to start from scratch. Then you go in-house and you realize, wow, documentation is out of date. Every time you try to actually look at the functionality of a feature or try to improve something, we had to baseline what was there. And, you operate over different platforms. So if you have iOS or Android or web, they have all different architectures and constraints. And so you think you have one feature, but actually you have 5 to 10 different manifestations of this feature. And, again, it depends on it depends on the organizational setup behind it, of course, as well. If the engineer of the Android speaks to the engineer of the iOS version, and how the practice and the craft of the discipline keeps track of it. So very typically, my personal experience was that often when we were doing sprint planning, we had to really take apart what we wanted to improve and deeply understand it. And there was no other way than going back to checking what was in the design files. They never matched with what was in code. So we reconstructed that first before we could actually understand what are the decisions, the interventions from a product perspective, the leverage points to improve it. And then when I started with this research, I realized, wow, pretty much everyone is doing this.
That's the scariest bit that I found really unbelievable.
It was not just me. It was not just our team, and this was essentially the point, that I was working with really smart people, very passionate, wanted to really change the product for the better. And we were so inhibited by actually making a difference because it took us so long to reconstruct the reality of what was in code versus what we thought was live.
And I wanted to invite those in the audience that have an experience about the challenges with product visibility. Please share in the comments. We'll be able to see them live as you type, or if you have any questions, don't wait at the end, just ask it as we go. And with this in mind, I think that it is really important to think about and talk about visibility, but in the context that you defined, Julia, which is visibility is product infrastructure, which I think is one of the key findings of the report, because now with the AI overlay on top of it, it becomes even more critical to have this right. Otherwise, we keep accelerating and shipping fast around something that we understand less and less, and it's not. It doesn't require to be a rocket science to figure out what's the outcome at the end of the day. And when you think about visibility in this context of product infrastructure, what actually made you position this as such a core ingredient for success, especially at this point?
Yeah, I think a lot of organized, when you think about, when I started to surface all this data in this research report, and I realized, and I compared a little bit about what do other business functions do, and essentially all other business functions have a system of record. You go into
Do you mean sales, for example? Let's be concrete.
Exactly. They'll have a CRM or,
or legal. They also have a system in place with the version control. It's really strict.
and finance will have a system of record in place, and HR will have a system, like employment records, a system in place. Engineering has a system of record in place, and product, which is actually the revenue generating function in the business, has no record of their as is in place. No version control, nothing. We have people. We go to people and ask them, do you remember how this works? This is, and like fundamentally, when you realize we use these human processes, we often call them alignment, we call them discovery, we call them, requirements gathering. These are workarounds. These are workarounds to the fact that we don't have a system of record. I believe we are desperate. We need a system of record that is a baseline so we can put all our workarounds and hook that against something that can live and breathe as it changes, just like all the other systems do. And this is why I coined that phrase, product infrastructure. I know we live in a time where a lot of words are being coined, just like product visibility and otherwise. But I think there is a real fundamental, like what are the enablement functions that product really needs that we can scale on easily and we can refer back to, especially with that acceleration of AI, where you just cannot feed enough context. And even if you do, right, like, gosh, when I'm through my 35 turns in one conversation, I forgot where I started, right? So it is that level of, we throw a lot of words at the problem, but we still haven't understood the real foundational layer. And this is what I think infrastructure means, like it is an enablement layer. So we don't have to keep thinking about the reconstruction. We just use the infrastructure. Think of roads or plumbing, right? Like you don't think about where things are going. They're in place. They enable you to do other things. And that's my hope. We are missing infrastructure to better product. We spend way too much time on that front piece. If we had infrastructure, maybe we could have better products.
Absolutely. And I also think that I use this for my own rationale to understand why, despite the fact that everyone is working so hard, results are not really there. So when I read the report, I thought, oh my God, it's possibly connected to this visibility as a product, missing product infrastructure. But I also wanted to ask you, at what point this context stacks in a way, which is definitely showing internally with everything that you spoke about, the alignment goals, going to look for Bob who knew everything and Bob left and all of that. At what point does this actually become a real customer problem that product leaders should be worried about?
Yeah, I think it is already a customer problem. I mean, last week I was on a webinar where someone had wipe coded the video conferencing interface, and it showed you couldn't mute, you couldn't unmute, you couldn't ask people to leave, the chat didn't work, and it was like, yeah, we can, we can build it, but does it really make the interaction better? And I think we're all riddled with problems when you try to submit a form, or you're trying to check your bank account, or you're trying to rate. I mean, the amounts of time when I was working on a product and my organization suggested, oh, let's just have customers raise their own customer support help desk ticket. I was like, how is this? Is like an internal process we externalize. That's not a customer experience, right? Like this is not what will drive, like allow customers to achieve their goals or make progress towards what they want to achieve. And I think this is where, like these organizational functions start to edge into, we kind of forgot that we're doing this for a purpose, right? Like we're doing this for a customer, so the customer pays us money so the business can thrive. But this line of interaction gets so convoluted because we're so busy with all our specialisms that we forget about that direct relationship. And we see this already in so many data points, Kwasi. I'm sure you know the DORA report, the cost of acquisition is getting much higher, the cost of switching is lower, so customer loyalty is harder and harder to come by. And with the AI elements, so building something that's valuable is so much more than releasing the code into the wild. It is about that customer relationship, like what are we trying to build to enable customers to achieve something.
So in your opinion, who is in charge then of making sure that this product infrastructure is in place? Is it the CPO job? Is it the CEO job? Is it PMs themselves that have to demand that this is in? What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally, I do think product needs a system of record. It is a product. It's a product discipline, but product is multidisciplinary. You need these other perspectives to support and come together. In my ideal world, yes, there is a product responsibility, but it needs to be in partnership with engineering. It needs to be in partnership with the CEO, the business function behind it, right? Because, we spoke about this already, but product translates between customer, the external market to the internal capabilities. And this constant translation cannot be operating in an isolated function. So while I think product can hold the torch and lead the way, ultimately the infrastructure needs to respond to both sides. So if infrastructure is a road, it needs to lead between customers and the company.
Mm-hmm. But what I'm trying to get to, and hopefully the audience can relate to this, is that what we are talking here is not just a product ops problem, but actually it's a leadership failure in a way of not realizing how critical this product infrastructure is for the success and for growth, for retention, for user trust. What is your take on this? Do you also see it as a leadership paramount responsibility to start with?
Yeah, I think ultimately, the leadership of a business clearly has a responsibility to generate and to steer towards value. So it's about how do we make money? It's a layer abstract, it's a layer above how does the product work? But the line is direct, right? It is completely interconnected. Revenue comes or is generated by product interaction. And this is really the crux, right? It's almost, we treat this as separate problems. They're interlinked. They're the same system. You cannot get more money from a product if people are not using it. And you can't make up money and shareholder value if the product isn't working properly. So while I understand that senior execs have so much more on their plate and have to think about so many more functions and ways of orchestrating the business, what we need is orchestrating our products so that we can so we can feed into that orchestration into the business. And it's not separate because product drives the business.
Mm. And I also think that there is so much right now going on around the importance of product judgment, making these decisions, influencing AI in a way that we can make the right choices in terms of solving the problems for the customers that are critical, etc., etc. But when I was thinking about product visibility, in my opinion, you cannot have any judgment of any capacity if you don't really have the same picture of reality, of starting point of what is critical, what the business impact is, and of course what the customer is going to get at the end of the day. And I wanted to ask you, what is your perspective? How do you see the relationship between product judgment and product visibility?
Yeah, I think the report, Kwasi, you know this because you were a beta reader of our report. But I think the fundamental bottom line of the report is we in product don't have a baseline. we all talk about we want to improve the product. And for that, we have to understand our as is, like what is the baseline? So we can identify what the to be is. For some reason, or we've discussed the reasons behind, or some of the reasons behind it, we normalize the fact that we didn't have a baseline. And so we're all talking about improving, but this sort of foundational work of really understanding what is our starting point, and what, like, so often when it comes to product judgment, is what are the trade-offs, what are the gives and takes, what are our leverage points that we can actually influence right now, what's the cost and the willingness of investment to shift this constraint towards a different outcome. That itself is that reconstruction. So the job of judgment, that decision making around, is this a good idea? Can we test it? Can we even do we even have that capability without investing into the whole replatforming of migration of our tech stack? Like, otherwise our product managers end up as project managers, and we've seen that far too often. And yeah, that's very painful, I think.
And I also, I'm seeing here one comment in the chat that pop up. So thank you for that, highlighting that some of the limitations from the code base are already related to the mature product, but sometimes AI cannot help with the code complications or limitations. So absolutely. And actually, this idea, Julia, that you spoke about, this product foundation and product visibility, I've been thinking about, shouldn't we actually start talking about a certain standard or new minimum that is required before we can actually leverage fully the capabilities of AI and think about acceleration? Because right now we just slamp it on top of everything. But I think if we are more disciplined and really responsible for business growth and success, we also owe it to establish this new standard of product visibility. And without it, not even contemplate AI until you fix your house and make it in order. What is your view? Is this actually realistic? Can we do it without slowing everything down?
I think our default, the thing that we've learned in this industry, is that we have to get better at processes. And it's very ingrained, like we think, oh, we just have to get better at processes. And AI pushes us into almost like a forcing function that you see manifesting today. So in one scenario is we have agentic orchestration or agentic development now. When you really look at agentic development, teams are now dealing with PRs that contain hundreds of lines of generated change and text that you need to fire alongside with skills and MD files and instructions and more layers of process designed to keep agents useful and in check. And of course, we've heard the reports, but developers tell us that they pay a price. Like after 4 hours, they're so exhausted in this context switching, just trying to keep up on top of the documentation. They of trying to build with new technology. And the second, of course, is context, right? Like the quality of AI and the output of these agents completely depend on how much relevant product context they can actually access. And context dilutes. So if you throw more stuff on it, it doesn't necessarily make it better. And this is where we come back to that judgment piece, right? Like fundamentally, I think what we need to understand is, where are we? What generates value? And how do we move towards it? And sometimes that's experimentation, but there is also an element of system legibility that engineering has to some extent. Observational tools, products do not. We restitch things together. So I would love to see a quality gate for visibility, but I think we will, companies aren't even aware of this right now. I think this is really the crux.
Well, if one thing everyone listening to this can take away is, remember, product visibility is $1 million problem per year. So that's not a little bit of urgency here, right there. So if we start talking with numbers, I think it's no rocket science. For me, if I'm the CPO, what do I need to fix first? Right?
Yeah. Well, I hope that our audience can take this away, because, like, in the end, what we're now entering is this era of constant change, and staying on top of that change with any view of coherence, I believe, is already a big problem. You put more speed into that, it will just fragment more. So yes, if any of our audience has any say in the company, do raise it, because there is you always see this, especially in, systems compensate. They want to continue the way they are as much as they can. So they compensate and compensate and compensate. But when the compensation is bigger than what you're trying to achieve, you see that the workaround actually is tackling the wrong problem. And I think that's where we ultimately land in this whole product baseline situation, that because we don't have any infrastructure, we're running discovery, which is mad. So with AI, we want infrastructure so we can baseline, so we can improve and be a lot more precise around where we can automate, what makes sense to speed up, and how do we intervene in our systems, which comes back to our circle, just understand the system before you intervene.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, is it possible to recommend at least 3 starting points of how leaders would wrap their head around what is the product visibility tax, so to say, within their company? What should be the 3 things that they can do kind of tomorrow?
Yeah, I think, the report surfaces this very clearly, and I hope people can go away and download the long form of this. But right now, what we see, these sort of normalized workarounds that we talked about, alignment meetings. If you find yourself more than 50% of your day, of your week, in alignment meetings, it means you need more mental effort to baseline where you're at and what you're trying to do, then you're able to actually move on the work. So that's already a telltale sign. The other factors are, do you have technical documentation or customer support tickets that repeat all the time? You can actually trace these back, and you can start quantifying it. When there is a repeated problem, you start to realize, well, wouldn't it be worth just fixing the bug rather than repeating the same customer support issues? But fundamentally, I think you need to understand what are your valuable journeys, what are the valuable customer interactions, and are they functioning? So if you have instrumentation, if you have analytics, and
hold on, we have a disturbance on my side. Just a minute.
We're just taking a small break for Krasi to come back. Because I can't see you at all, I won't be talking into the void.
Okay, sorry about that. I had an unexpected visitor and disruption on my side, but it's part of life, yes. So I really appreciate Julia coming to the AI Pressure Cooker today, and I hope, if nothing else, at least we can begin to draw this little circle and think more critically about product infrastructure, product visibility, and everything that is at stake to actually make our products more impactful and ultimately drive the success that everyone in the organization cares about. Any final thoughts from your side?
Yeah, thanks, Krasi. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm really super happy to be here. If leaving, our product leaders with any last words, we come back to the same old question as always. Start asking why and just do not stop. Why does this feature exist? Why is this product structured this way? Why are we doing this for customers? Why can't it be any other way? Why is this particular way of interacting actually delivering value? And this is increasingly really important for us to become really clear on what are we actually doing, because that level of intent needs to travel into the coherence of the product experience that we're trying to create in the near future.
Wow, that's a really great summary, Juliette. Thanks so much. And thank you everyone for tuning to the AI Pressure Cooker today. And I do encourage you to check the summary and the research from Lumio on their website. And happy reading. See you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Gracie. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.